I'll just channel my inner brain.
Yeah. Okay. So easy questions to start off with. Can you tell me a little bit about who you are, where you're from, etc.?
Yes, I guess. I think that's easy. My name's Abby. I paddle out of Pickering and Toronto. I started off in Pickering. So I started paddling like 15 years ago, actually, I think 15, 14 years ago. So I started in high school. I was lucky that my high school team actually had a dragon boat team that took dragon boat pretty seriously, because there was one other high school that would always kick our butts. So we were always the underdogs trying to like match that. And my sister paddled. So she also paddled at the world level, like on the junior national team and everything. So when I was younger, I'd always be watching her race with my dad and like my family as well. And so then when I got to high school, I kind of knew about it and started doing that. Then I actually played volleyball competitively throughout my whole life until university. And that's when I stopped playing competitively and then switched to paddling, because I thought it would be fun to try something not as competitive, until I realized that I don't know how to not be competitive, and then just went further and further from there. And then obviously with the pandemic and we weren't able to paddle in dragon boats as frequently, I started taking up more of outrigger canoe. So I mean, we've always done like fitness testing, time trials, and training here and there, just mostly for the time trials for dragon boat. But then I actually switched kind of from like a power athlete to an endurance athlete in a way. Like I started to build more of an endurance base over the last 2 years to be able to race in outrigger races. Open water paddling is a little bit different in Canada than it is in anywhere that has an ocean, but I've been dipping my toes in different types of races like that as well now. So I guess I've done it pretty competitively, because I forgot to mention anything national team related, but like 2015 U24 national team, 2017 U24 national team, and then finally 2019 Premier national team. Obviously no 2021, so maybe 2023 if I can get the time off work, that'll also be in the books, but a couple years.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what open water paddling's like in Canada for people, silly Americans like me that have no idea?
Well, when it's cold, we don't typically go on the lake. It's kind of like, unless you have like a dry suit, you're mostly either not going out on the water until about April, or you're staying in smaller bodies of water. So we do a lot of paddling on rivers and bays until we start to get more comfortable with going out on the lake. But the lake is so variable that you either have conditions that are extremely flat, or you have like 3-foot waves that are 2 seconds apart. And so it's just more choppy, and something that I'm kind of getting used to, like figuring out my sea legs, like trying to get a balance in the boat and figuring out like the unevenness of the waves. It's like open water would just be to me like anywhere on Lake Ontario or any of the other Great Lakes, and it's kind of unpredictable what it's going to be like. You could have windy but no waves, you could have waves but no wind, you could have both, you could have none, you could have anything. So it's very cold all the time.
Uh-huh. How do you, because I know, so from my very limited experience with trying to like read weather apps and guess what the weather conditions are going to be like out on whatever body of water I'm trying to go out on, how do you all do that up there?
Oh my gosh, I'm probably like the biggest noob with this too. Like sometimes I just like hope for the best and show up and like see what it's gonna be like. But I personally just look at the weather network to see how strong the winds are. And then I use something called magic seaweed to see what the waves are going to be like in the wave period. I don't even know like the terms well enough to like confidently say what they mean. I kind of just see what looks like it'll be a windy or wavy day. But pretty much if you have a large, like a 4-second swell period, then that'll be pretty good surfing conditions. And if you have like 4-foot waves but 1 second swell periods, it's like It's down.
No good.
Yeah. But I know people use like wind finder or wave finder, or I can't remember which one. But
Yeah, there's when I use Wind Finder, but I think, and it does it for me too on my non-wavy river. It's like the periods are like 2 seconds apart or 10 seconds apart. It's like, yeah, but there's no waves. So how
yeah,
do you do that?
yeah. And like if there's a south or a southwest or a southeast wind, I know that it'll be okay. But if it's a strong north wind, and I know it's not going to be a good time. It's just going to be like a headwind into the waves coming to the shore. So
Ooh, a headwind into waves.
yeah,
No, thank you. That's
yeah.
wow, worst of every world.
October and September tends to be like the really surprisingly good surfing days. Like even at 6 a.m., you get some like really calm big waves. But recently it's been a lot of like waves heading towards the shore, but a crosswind. And so it's kind of just like this the whole time. And I don't know, I feel like I'm still so new at going out on open water that like I'm still a little tentative in the way, like I don't paddle as well in those yet. But for instance, if you think back to like, I had one video on TIOC, like our one outrigger race, and it was something that we weren't very prepared. I wasn't very prepared for, I guess, but I think a couple of others would say the same, where it was just like massive winds against your side or massive waves against your side the whole time. So we started off with it against our like non-AMA side, and then the finishing was on our AMA side. And not many of us can say that we didn't fall in. I took a tumble 2 times, and at that point I was like just swearing at my AMA, being like, you better stay down for the rest of this. Like I have 5 more kilometers to make it into shore. Like I am not going in one more time. I don't think I could physically get back in this boat again. But it's something that I feel like we're not as experienced with here because we don't have consistent conditions to practice in with waves.
Yeah. So I'm not familiar at all with like the Toronto outrigger scene. Is there like either nobody or such few people that have that kind of skill set?
There's a couple of really good athletes that can handle those conditions really well. I would say that a lot of the Toronto outrigger community, from what I'm aware of, like I'm sure there's tons of people that have a lot more experience that I just don't know about them yet. But where my background is dragon boat, so now there's a lot of dragon boat paddlers that are getting more out into outrigger, which is fun to see. Like last year they had like 30-40 boats delivered. Just past the past week they had like another huge bundle of outriggers come to Toronto. So most of the people that I know are just flat water paddlers dipping their toes into outrigger now, whether it's to train for dragon boat or to try something new. Some of the athletes have picked up stand-up paddleboarding. Some of them have picked up surf ski. We're kind of just like trying different things now, but there have been a couple of athletes that are definitely more adapted to those different conditions that did really well at the island race. I mean, I could think of, I don't want to like butcher anybody's name, so I won't mention any names in particular, but there's a couple that definitely know what they're doing, that have done training camps down in the States and have surfed on ocean waves and know how to handle any conditions pretty much.
Yeah, it's so interesting that some of us have to travel very far to get that experience. Which is kind of unfortunate, but that's just kind of how it is, given geography and how water works in different places.
Have you been doing a lot of like ocean paddling lately, haven't you?
I mean, I've been doing a lot of big trips like these past 2 years to get some ocean paddling in.
Yeah.
And then like I don't live very far from parts of the Atlantic. It's just that like the Atlantic is not super conducive to preparing yourself for big ocean conditions, because it just like doesn't usually get that big, or if it does, it's like around a storm, which is also dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And just like the Atlantic is shallow and the waves aren't powerful, so it's very hard to learn that kind of
Right.
surfing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always in awe, like watching all the videos in like Hawaii or any places that outrigger is like a strong part of like their community, where it's how they handle the waves, and they'll just be like sitting on top of one, like flying their ama up, just like I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, I'm so scared. I'm like, oh God, I hope I stay on.
Yeah, and they make it look easy too. It's like, oh, okay, guys.
3 strokes and then just be like sitting and chilling, and I'm like, I gotta get on this one.
I mean, some of it too is like I don't know what the waves are like where you are, but like the steepness of the wave has a lot to do with it. Like the period of the wave
Yeah,
has a lot to do with it, and the power of the wave does too, if they are right, like, kind of determines
yeah,
if they're rideable or not. Because like in New Jersey, they could be shallow and really weak, or they could be like slightly more powerful but still like shallow, and it makes it really hard to get on it on an outrigger.
yeah. I wouldn't even. I don't really know waves that well. All I know is that sometimes when you get on top of them, you really have to slow your boat down because the swell period is so short that you're like going uphill after 2 seconds up onto the next one and then going back down. And I don't know. I got to figure out timing.
Yeah, I heard it's a skill that just takes experience to learn. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Keeping an eye on it too. Like one week it could be like, okay, Saturday is going to be good surfing conditions. Saturday comes around, it's flat. And you're like, okay, like so much for that. There's not really many downwind opportunities,
Mm,
logistically as well. Like
yeah.
there's not, it's kind of hard to plan for it according to the weather, but also to like figure out boat transportation and everything. So it'd be fun to do more of. I say more of those. I've never done any sort of downwind. Any paddles that I do into the waves are however much you paddle out into them is how much surf you get back. So I've never
Yeah,
actually.
the out and back situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it would be very cool if there's Toronto listeners here. If you are interested in also learning how to downwind, connect with Abby, and you guys can carpool and
We can
shuttle with each other. And you can be friends and you can hoolie together, and it'll be fun learning times.
exactly. Yeah. If
Yeah.
you want to learn how to downwind, don't do it from me, but I'll join you.
Yeah. um all right. So what has been your favorite paddling moment, whether it's been like at a practice or a race with another paddler, or like a trip you took?
Yeah. I used to have like one really prominent memory, but I think it's actually been um, overtaken. So the one that I used to always have in the top of my head is at 2017 Worlds in France, and we were going up against Thailand, who had a 6-month training camp prior to that. That team was pretty much going to their Premier Worlds, but the timing of the U24, we were actually combined with the European Club Crew Championships. So we weren't going to the other worlds with the rest of the crews. So they had like 2 opportunities for worlds. Anyways, we knew going into it that we were kind of the underdog team and that they had like a stronger team than us pretty much. But in that one race, we came second, but you could tell that every single person literally put every single thing that they had into that moment to try and take it. And we came close, but obviously didn't take it. But it was just the emotion in that race was something that I've never felt before until this last weekend, with the team that I've been paddling with in Toronto. We've been practicing together on Zoom for the last 2 years, have been in a dragon boat for the last 2 months, maybe training again. And how we felt going into those races, like I've never felt more confident in every single athlete on that team. And it was just such a good feeling knowing that there's so many other athletes willing to put everything on the line, like as much as I am. into their training over the last 2 years to stay with it, that it's finally showing in our paddling as well. So I was just riding on a high off of that last regatta, based on how the two teams, the women's team and the mixed team, performed in that one. So it was just a really heartwarming feeling, knowing that everybody was just as fired up and like dialed in as I was. And like, it's rare to find that many athletes that have the same passion for you as something. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that trumps my other one now.
Oh, okay. Would you say that a lot of this passion that your whole team had came from, well, I guess, like, what do you think the source of that passion is for such a dedicated group?
I don't know. It's like you're all willing to be in the same amount of pain, and you know that it's really hard if you're on a team where 5 people are bought in and the rest of the 15 are kind of there to go for the ride. But you kind of build off of each other's energy, seeing the person beside you, seeing what their training looks like every day and how they're dialing in their nutrition, their sleep, their hydration, and putting off their plans in order to be rested and recovered for the weekend, and knowing that they're doing that. So that's on you too. Same with our coach. He puts everything on the line for us as well. And it's kind of just like you feed off of each other's passion. And it's something about, I don't know if it's just being on the water, seeing how fast you can go, breaking the different boundaries that you never thought as a team that you could break before. And then after you break those boundaries, realizing how much more you can even go from there. It's like you keep building and building on it. And I don't know, it's hard to pinpoint exactly why we do it. I mean, why do we like to suffer so much? I mean, these training sessions aren't like physically enjoyable. They're hard, but yet you still show up 30 minutes early to like get excited for it and go for it and put everything you have into your practices, let alone your races. I don't know. I wish I could tell you why we do it, but I guess it's just because everyone else there is also doing it.
Yeah, so it sounds like a lot of like inner drive, but also it seems like your coach also is an example of the values that he wants his athletes to live out, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I have like the utmost respect for Chris. His coaching philosophies and strategies are implemented in a way that I've never seen before, and that are like so powerful and yet encouraging. And he can take any athlete at any level and turn them into an elite athlete. Even if you already think you're at the elite level, like there's so much more you can go. And it's just like everything he does is for his team. So it's something that if you have a coach that's that bought into you as an athlete and that as a team, it's like, it's so nice to see somebody in your corner rooting for you and rooting for your team in that level.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
Yeah.
A question about teams and coaching in Canada, because it's really different from Canada to the US. Are your club coaches paid?
Yeah.
Is it like, it's not like you need a day job still, right?
It depends. It depends on your club, I think, because the 2 clubs that I have paddled for, Dragon Boat is their career. So they, whether the other club that I used to work for and paddle with, that's their job on top of like Dragon Boat festivals and events and everything. That's their source of income. And same with our coach now, because the club is his club. And so all the teams underneath of him as well, like that's his main priority and that's his job. But then if you go to other clubs, sometimes you'll have coaches where it's kind of like their nighttime job.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be more of like if you only have one team or a couple of rec teams, then you can't really build a career off of that, I don't think.
Yeah. It's really rare in the US to have a club coach that is paid a living, well, that is paid, period. And I don't actually personally know of any coaches that are paid a living wage to coach Dragon Boat for a living.
Yeah. I don't know, like, if would that change? Do you have more people like willing to go to practices then, or like go to clubs if maybe the cost of joining the team is less?
I mean, I feel like for some places it's still not accessible given the membership costs.
Mm.
Like, it kind of depends on the team and like where they get their equipment from. Like, do they own their dragon boats, or is it through like a regional organization where the team rents them from? Um, there's one club that I know of in Philadelphia that pays their coaches. I think they have 3.
Mhm.
But that it's not enough to make a living. I don't even know if it's past a couple $1,000s.
Yeah, and it's really hard to grow the sport if that's not the case, if that's not their main priority and it's kind of
Yeah.
like their side job, or their volunteer position.
Hmm.
It's hard to grow a club or grow a team or have people invested in it, especially over the last 2 years. Nobody's going to want to volunteer to show up on your Zoom calls every week when you don't know when you're going to be racing next. And we've seen a lot of community and rec teams folded this year. Our regattas are a lot smaller, because we don't have near as much like maybe even less than 50% of the same registration as we had in previous years. And it's really sad to see, because a lot of the top athletes come from those clubs that just start off small, and then you start to see how big the teams can really get. And maybe you started with a volunteer coach and then finally get the opportunity to have a coach that's their main priority, and you see like how much different the sport could be. It's sad to see that the sport wasn't able to grow in that respect, especially in the States, if that's not even the norm there too.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say like for us over the pandemic, like a lot of clubs did like the Zoom trainings and stuff. And I think we got back to dragon boating earlier than you all did. I
Yeah.
know on the East Coast, my club was able to hold their regatta, the one that I just paddled in this past 2 weekends ago with Catch. They actually were able to hold it in August.
Hmm.
And so like all of the competitive teams have been practicing since maybe June. And there's also like a lot of community teams at that race, and they'd been able to practice since June. So we had like most of the summer to still do it. And we still held our nationals in October as well.
Right.
And I think like where the sport grew the most, for us, for people who are already into it, was in outrigger. Like so many people got their own OCs, which it sounds like is similar to situation up in Toronto.
Yeah.
But it does make me curious, like the athletes whose dragon boat clubs like folded or like just stopped being clubs anymore, where did they go?
Yeah. I don't know, because a lot of our a lot of our athletes, I would say, come from university teams. I think that's where they're first exposed to higher level paddling, because a lot of our regattas will have like a sport division mixed with university or U24. And that's when you get the university athletes that were gym rats before transitioned into dragon boat, and then they could see what other teams they could go to. But then over the last 2 years, they haven't been in school. They don't have the opportunity to go to different clubs to be exposed to see that dragon boat's even a thing. And it's like we lost a lot of that flow. But then also maybe the smaller clubs too, maybe they weren't able to hang on because they have still like a more cautious athletes that don't feel comfortable getting into a boat with people yet. So maybe they didn't go anywhere. Maybe it was more just like the socializing, and then the team folds and they say, well, that was fun. Let's just like find a new hobby. So I think that a lot of the smaller clubs, I don't know where that flow would have been. But yeah, it's nice to see a lot more athletes taking up like small craft paddling in Toronto. It's going to be cool to see in Toronto, like in the warmer months. It's still sometimes pretty cold here, but you see a lot more outriggers on Lake Ontario going around the island, and it's fun because it's also I think helped the dragon boat community in a way too, because now we have better water feel. Now we actually know how to move a boat and not move a paddle through the water. We know how to actually connect in the water, balance, use our core to stabilize. There's so many benefits to flat water paddling and outrigger paddling that have helped the teams that have stayed together, that have done a lot of the training over the last 2 years in just outrigger alone, that it's almost like we didn't even miss a beat in the dragon boat. Now we're like, we know how to actually move a boat. So
Yeah.
it's nice to see that.
So two things I'm getting from that is, one, that at next Worlds, Team Canada is going to be even scarier. And two, just like the amazing benefits that OC has for dragon boat paddlers. There's like one club in particular that I can think of in like the Philadelphia area where a lot of their people were able to buy outriggers and still like go out together, and they came into both last season and this season so much stronger than a lot of the other teams, because they were just both for like the consistency and like keeping with a paddling routine over the summer of 2020. They had that benefit, but then they also had the benefit of like branching out to outrigger and learning all those skills that outrigger does teach you.
Yeah. It's almost like you get all the benefits from learning how to paddle on your own, but then also when you start to race on your own, you get to feel that type of intensity that you actually need when you start to paddle with a team as well. You're like, oh, I can't slack off at all in this race. It's all on me. So it's like, there's so many benefits from it. Our coach did a really great thing and actually purchased a fleet of like, I think 8 Hurricanes for us to start paddling in. And so we were really fortunate to have good like ultralight boats to paddle in throughout the last couple of years to get some good training in. So that's really benefited our team, and any other teams that were still out on the water training in outrigger, I think have really seen the benefits of it. And I think it also could help to build up your aerobic base as well, so that you can have better power endurance for a dragon boat. But one thing that I struggle with now is going from being able to hold a steady pace for a long period of time to now actually being able to fire for 200 meters. Like, it's a little bit of a difficult transition for me in the moment to figure out, okay, how do I get my power back in this? I'm not the greatest at sprinting in my outrigger right now. So that's something that I'm trying to figure out on my own.
Yeah, it's something that I think I struggled with in the beginning too when I was first racing outriggers, is like figuring out how to apply power consistently and like when to do it. And it just takes time to figure out.
Yeah.
So about that fleet of Hurricanes. So I actually did another one of these interviews last night, and I interviewed another Canadian friend of mine who is actually in the US now, but he was talking a lot about access to outriggers and like where he's from. There is a lot of access, and we were talking about like how could we replicate that in the United States. The way is like for clubs to buy like club fleets of outriggers that are not super expensive, but that obviously takes money. So how did your coach get a fleet of Hurricanes in the middle of the pandemic?
I personally don't know like all the behind the scenes with that, but I think he just saw it as the best investment into his team that he could provide us. So he invested in a trailer to be able to bring the boats everywhere, and then we had the flexibility of being able to rent whenever, wherever. But in terms of like the logistics of how he was able to budget for it, not completely sure, but he just saw it as like an investment into his team and into his club in order to better prepare us and to give us more training opportunities. Before we used to rent from another another athlete, another person in Toronto, we would rent some of their boats as well. So there are ways to have access to those boats, and there's a couple of clubs now, but in terms of the ultralights, it's kind of rare to have that many available to rent. So I'm very grateful for him investing in that and investing that to like all the other athletes as well. Um, but I think a lot of us saw the benefits of spending the pretty penny on the boat to be able to take it and train whenever you want, wherever you want, instead of having to haul an albatross with 2 people down to the lake and have it. Yeah. So I think a lot of us saw a good investment opportunity to get our own as well.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely one of the best purchases I've made was
Yeah.
my outrigger.
Yeah. So much that I like almost want a second one.
I saw you got 2 racks. What's the second rack for?
We were borrowing one so that we could transport a boat down to Toronto to paddle with us for the day.
Okay.
Unfortunately, not my rack, not my boat.
Darn.
Oh, I know. Maybe I'll just get another rack.
Yeah, why not? Cliff Roach, take my money.
Yeah, exactly.
So why would you say that you're passionate about paddling? And if so, why paddling and not something else?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say I'm both passionate and obsessive. I think that everything I do revolves around bettering myself for my team and bettering myself as an athlete, but I'm also so passionate. I think I've realized that I'm passionate for pain and suffering. I really enjoy mental challenges, and like I don't know if this is a horrible trait, but I've now decided that whatever I think I can do it. Um, Signing up for a half marathon, I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Like, and just like it was the best time of my life. Like, I think I like putting myself through all these different challenges and seeing how much I can raise the bar on what I'm physically capable of doing. It's like I'm only ever going to be at this athletic ability at this point in my life for so long. So I might as well see what I can do with it and how much I can push it. And like outrigger definitely changed my perspective of myself as an athlete, because I always saw myself, and coaches always saw me as the sprinter, the 500 meter, the 200 meter athlete. Like, okay, 2K, I guess we'll put her in, but like being a bigger girl in the dragon boat community is like, and I say bigger as in like 160 pounds compared to like 140 pounds. You're seen as like a power athlete, and it's kind of fun to be like, okay, well then let's challenge that too, and let's see what I can do in terms of distances. And like, okay, 10K races were fun, let's do a 17-kilometer race. Let's see, okay, let's do like a 30-kilometer paddle, a 40-kilometer paddle, and see how that goes. And so it's like dragon boat is my gateway to challenging myself to be the best I can be at something in the physical state that I am, because I've always been a very mediocre athlete that works really hard. Volleyball, I was very mediocre at, but like you would see me at every single clinic, every single like practice session, everything that you could see me at there. And so I've kind of just been like a workhorse towards paddling. In terms of the paddling though, it's like there's something so grounding about being on the water. It's like you wake yourself up at 3:45 in the morning, and for some people it's like, how on earth do you even like get yourself to do that? But once you're sitting on the water at sunrise at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and you just see like the sun going up, the clouds are arranging perfectly, it's shining off the water, it's like that is like the most like abundant joyous feeling. Like just it's so serene and so grounding to me. And then I can be so angry and paddle on it too. It's like grounding in a way, and also it's just so passionate about anything water. Like if I am having a bad day, if I go sit by the water, I feel like I'm instantly calmed. If
Mhm.
I'm fired up before a race and super anxious, as soon as I'm sitting and like my paddle's in the water, it's almost like I'm grounded to the water. I'm feeling calm again, and I'm channeled into that. I don't know, it's kind of a surreal feeling. I feel like everybody has their one thing that brings them back to earth and like connects them with it. And I feel like water's just like my happy place for that.
Yeah. I feel like what you're saying about like being a mediocre athlete who shows up, I resonate a lot with that.
Yeah.
But it also just goes to show in paddling, like there's a lot of people who are naturally very athletic who are good paddlers, but then there's also a lot of people who just show up and do the work and are motivated by this love and passion for being on the water, and they also put in the work and can also do very well. It's very
Yeah.
interesting how that works.
Yeah. Yeah. I pride myself on being a workhorse that has to like be told when to slow down, because I know that I have to put in that much effort in order to like be able to be where I am. I can't just sit back and be okay. Like if anybody ever looks at me and thinks that I have it naturally, then they don't see the 15 years that I've put into dedicating every single day into getting where I am.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something so nice that like you've put in that much work and come this far, and it's like how much farther can you go?
Yeah.
It's fun to see. I think it's really fun to see the female athletes pushing the boundaries on it too.
Yes, absolutely. We should talk more about that. But so what would you say like has been your experience as a female athlete who's high performing? Like have any experiences that you've had been like either different because you're a female athlete, or different like in spite of you being a female athlete? Like what do you
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, it's always just assumed that the men are going to be better. And so that's almost always like my motivation to, to show up and like prove that that's not the case. Genetically, of course, they have advantages, but that's why we work so hard. But we've also, me and you have also both seen um, some lovely comments from male viewers on our YouTube channels that kind of just undermine our own abilities,
Mhm.
like things that are very obvious to us that they think, like that one comment about like, oh, did you know that your boat was meant for surfing? You caught a wave there, that's when you went fast. And I'm like, yeah, I did it, I know. Or like there's just so many, I feel like women athletes are so supportive, and men, you got to get them on your side, and some of them just don't want to. In terms of like where I am right now, especially on my team, there's so much respect between I feel like there would be no comments regarding gender or any like undermining your abilities or anything like that on my team and in my club. Um, so I'm very fortunate. I shouldn't say fortunate. I feel like that should just be a given, but I am fortunate that I don't really have too many bad experiences in person relating to like my paddling as a woman.
Would you say that especially in your club that like the club attracts certain kinds of male identifying paddlers, or would you say that like the coach creates that environment
I think
where
both,
people are
and our exec team. I think it's just like we have such a humble group of athletes that I paddle with that are like the most positive. Like you wouldn't find any of them talking bad about anybody. So you would know that they're not saying anything about you to anybody else either. It's like been the most positive team that I've ever been on. And like I would trust every single one of them with any of like my secrets or any of my own personal problems or issues. It's like I guess it's just the whole club has built that dynamic to be humble and to be respectful and to treat people equally, that like it's just expected, but you wouldn't have to tell anybody twice. But I think yeah, like probably the coach shuts down any sort of behavior as well that would be considered like disrespectful to other teams as well. So
That's good.
we want to carry ourselves in the most professional way that we can and represent our club and represent our coach and represent who we paddle with well.
Mhm.
So I think that plays a lot. Yeah. I think
Yeah,
the
that's really
thing that
awesome.
bothers me the most in terms of gender in the sport is I get it. The open teams are probably going to have the fastest times. But why is the open event the main event? Like the woman, like crushing a 200-meter world record in Thailand. Like, how come that wasn't a main event? I don't know. I feel like sometimes the open teams are always just more portrayed or like more fired up to watch because it's going to be the fastest of the fast. But I mean, our mixed crew can pull just as fast numbers as any open crew. And that just says a lot for our women and our men.
Mhm.
But I get it, but also like,
Well, in my mind, when you all broke that 200-meter world record, wait, you did the 200 and the 500 world record?
I think it was just the 200.
Oh, okay. Well, when
I'm
you
just blanking. I have a really short memory too. So, I mean, maybe it was the 500 and I'm just discrediting us. But
whatever world record you all broke, that was the main event in my mind. It did not matter what the men went on and did afterward.
I have no idea what happened in the men's boat.
Yeah, no, because like I was stoked for you all, and I'm assuming you were too stoked to pay attention to the men anyway.
Oh, the commentary too from like the hosts in Thailand was so great. Like that was an experience as well. That is also in the top of my memories too. But
Yeah.
I think that's a given.
Yeah.
Just to see how fast women can go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, also like one thing with the open boat, it's like it's not restricted by gender. Like the women's boat, yes, it is. And the open boat is just like the fastest of the fast. So
Exactly.
like if you have women that are stronger than your weakest men, throw
Yeah.
them in there.
The only problem that we have now is that they race the women's and the open so close together, assuming that the women won't race in the open. So you don't have the opportunity because your race is finishing while the open boat's on the way up to the line. So you actually don't get many opportunities to race your fastest lineup because they're also dedicated to a women's crew. I can guarantee that if you put our fastest athletes together, like that would be a great boat. If you put like in whether it's the Team Canada boat or
Mhm.
Team USA boat, if you put just the fastest paddlers in, that boat is going to be moving, and that boat won't be all men.
That's my goal for 2023 worlds, is to time trial so fast that I beat some of the men that make the open boat.
Honestly, my goal always beat the boys.
Yeah, beat the boys. Yeah.
Always.
I
As
did a race with a good friend of mine who's actually the women's coach for this upcoming cycle. And we did an OC2 race on the Hudson River, and we won the whole thing.
yeah.
And the person that wrote like the race recap in an email was like, and this guy in OC1 men's won and blah, blah, blah. And so I fired an email back at her and was like, no, actually, it was me and Megan that won the whole darn thing.
Yeah.
And there were mixed OC2s that we beat.
I'm telling you, it's not uncommon that women can be faster than men. Anytime our open and our women's boat are going together in the warm up, I mean, maybe a flaw of mine, but if the coach says, okay, be competitive in your sectionals, me and Marianne are so fired up that we're moving 100% to beat the boys. So it's always my goal is to be the boys or beat the boys.
Hashtag beat the boys.
Yeah, literally.
I'm gonna hold on. Yes, I like doing that too. Back to the I don't even know if this should be called a podcast, but whatever. Back to the thing. What is something you want to see more of in paddling, whether that's like collaboration across certain groups of people in paddling, cultural preservation or spreading culture, growth in the sport and in like a certain community, or yeah, what do you want to see more of in the sport?
I feel like there's so much. Oh gosh. Okay, I'll start off with the fact that with all of the recent purchases on outriggers in Toronto and Ontario and wherever, the knowledge on the culture behind it is very minimal, including myself. I wouldn't even be able to tell you the gist of it. And I think that's sad that I'm paddling in a craft where I don't know a lot about the background of it and like a lot of the meanings behind it. When I was first given my boat, I was told a couple of the ways to respect your boat, like don't step over it, never take a banana to the boat, just things like that. But I feel like that knowledge is not widespread at all. And in that knowledge, even those little things, not little things, but those facts that I was given are not well known at all. And the amount of times I've seen like people step over my boat, and I'm like, I just feel like there's so much more that we could do to respect it. And the background and the culture. There's just so many things that I should do also some more learning to find out about. But I think that even going down south and paddling to the places that are more knowledgeable in those areas can definitely help you to have a newfound respect for what you do and the paddling as well. I don't know if you have much input on that too.
I mean, it's kind of like, we were talking about like the wave riding knowledge up in Toronto and how it's like limited to like certain people. I feel like it's a similar thing down here. Granted, like we might have a handful more of people who actually have the cultural knowledge and background about outrigger. But it's really up to them to be like the conduits of it, and that's a large burden to put on someone like the one person that has the cultural knowledge and is the one that's spreading it, whereas it's like everyone's responsibility actually to like seek it out themselves, but people tend to not do that, which is a little sad.
Yeah.
One cool thing though that has been happening in some of the East Coast races, because part of ECORA's mission is cultural preservation and spreading. So in a couple of the races that I've done over the years, there's the same woman. I don't know if she's actually a paddler or if she's just like a friend of someone that's a paddler, but she comes and does a blessing for the canoes. And so she's like dressed up, she's wearing leis, and she's singing in Native Hawaiian, which is really cool. Like a cool experience for me as someone who doesn't know that culture to experience it and have that be a part of something that I do for fun. But then again, it's like there's that one woman and like the one organization that is really making an effort to preserve culture, but it really should be like individual paddlers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think even too with dragon boat festivals, like when I was growing up, there used to be a awakening the dragon ceremony every time, and now I see it less and less, and like the eye dotting ceremony, just seeing it less and less, or like it's before all the racing starts and it's like a day before, not everyone's there to like see it and it's not featured, where it's like there is like a lot of culture related to dragon boat, there is a whole story behind it, and there's food related to it, and like even that, like some of that's COVID too, like not having as much food and as many vendors, but like some festivals are better than others at centering the culture and like having like Chinese and other Asian businesses present, and then others it's just like, oh, this is just another sporting event sort of thing.
Yeah, like worlds and sometimes nationals, I would say that they do a better job at it. The regatta that I'm racing at this weekend, the Toronto International Dragon Boat Festival, does a pretty good job at it as well, in terms of the fact that there's the Dragon Boat Festival, but there's also another festival on the side with more Chinese businesses, food courts, and any more traditions as well in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
They do a lot of different like Toronto-based cultural activities there too. But when you're racing as well, you're told to stay and rest and everything, and not explore throughout that. But it's nice that people that are coming to watch and they see what we do, but then they also get the experience of the culture too. So I think that is better for the public. But in terms of the athletes, I feel like there could be a lot better knowledge on that too. But same thing as if you don't race very often, you joined a university team, you joined a rec team, you go to 2 regattas a year, you're not going to see that. You're not even going to know that exists. People are going to ask you like, what is dragon boat? And you're going to be like, well, it's a boat with 20 paddlers, and you go for it. And there won't be much more explanation than that in terms of the background and the culture of it too. So.
Yeah. And especially like as more people get into it, if there are people that haven't either been told or they haven't sought out that information about it, it's like, then they are just going to say, oh yeah, it's a boat with 20 people and there's a dragon on it. I don't know why.
Yeah, why is there a dragon? No clue. Like, what's a
Yeah.
dragon? Like, yeah.
Or like the races where they don't race with the dragon.
I was just gonna say that there's a lot of festivals that just won't have any dragon boat things. They'll yeah, that could be better. In terms of other things that I would like to see, the gender. I mean, let's end regattas with the women's race or the mixed race. That would be nice.
Mm-hmm. Like throw in, I don't know. Well, I guess like if you put senior races in between Premier, then that's unfair to the seniors who are fast enough to be Premier too. But like,
yeah,
throw in a break or something.
Exactly. Or even, yeah, like I guess Premier could be any age too. I'm sure that the seniors sometimes feel that way too. Like they're kind of overlooked where they're put on the first day, but not on the last day. And I don't know what the route is though to make that more equal. Somebody's got to race last and somebody's got to race first. Maybe it comes down to the division that has the most amount of athletes, which it is easier to field Premier teams because there is no restriction on it. Same with probably the Open. There's no restriction on anything. Just put anybody in the boat pretty much. So maybe it comes down to that and it's not that deep, but sometimes I take it personally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it would be nice to see some more recognition from our countries as well. We know that when you go overseas, a lot of the Asian countries have sponsorships from their governments in which they are paid for each gold medals, and yet the States and Canada brings home so many medals for their countries after we've already paid thousands of dollars to be there. Like even paying hundreds of dollars for our jersey kits and our flights and everything. And then you see the teams that really win, and like you think about how much better we could really elevate the sport if there was more funding for it and more sponsorship opportunities from anywhere else. Like getting into YouTube, I was like, oh, maybe I could get a couple of sponsorships for something to help support like some of my travels, some new paddle, things like that. And I'm like, there's nobody out there to reach out to. There's not really any companies or any supports for athletes in this field. I guess it's not like wide enough known, or the fact that it's just there's a lot more water sports that would get more attention.
We've been talking for like an hour. It's great. So the last two questions are kind of a little simpler, perhaps.
Okay.
What's your favorite post-paddling meal ever?
I have the world's largest sweet tooth, so asking me to pick one.
You can only pick one.
If I had a desire, I have a desired one and a one that I would get. If I could have a box of donuts, I would be all over it.
Okay.
I feel like ice cream trucks are more prevalent at regattas. That's where it ends up going.
Well, you got to bring your own donuts. Where are these donuts coming from?
But Tim Hortons donuts are not it.
Oh, wow. Because like whenever I think of like donuts in Canada, I only think of Tim Hortons.
I know they're fine. They get the job done, but there's better. There's better out there.
Well,
if you're
Tim Hortons is better than Dunkin' Donuts.
I don't know if I've had Dunkin' Donuts.
Don't have it.
Krispy Kreme trumps Tim Hortons.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Krispy Kreme's like, it's but you know, it's no artisan donut. I guess neither is Tim Hortons, but I like Tim Hortons always is just like elevated in my mind above all of the other chains, and maybe it's just because it's Canadian.
Yeah, it's there, and I don't know, you drive through and they're all there. So, but like then you get like thick one that's super fluffy and has like
Ooh.
cake crumbles on it and sprinkles, and it's like filled with icing, and like you can't tell me that Tim Hortons is anywhere near that. I don't know, vegan donuts too, those slap.
Oh.
I don't know what it is about them. Their texture is so good. It's almost like chewy.
All right, sorry, vegan people. We're gonna come for your donuts.
Yeah, well, I'm taking your donuts, but you can keep all the rest.
I'm like taking notes of topics we're talking about, and one of my notes is Tim Hortons slander.
Oh yeah, their coffee sucks. It tastes like water.
I mean, the first time I had it, I was like, this is like Dunkin' Donuts coffee. It's all right. It gets the job done, but
It doesn't even get the job done. I think they take the caffeine out of it and just replace it with water.
ooh, no. It needs to get the job done because like
Yeah.
the idea with one of the slogans of Dunkin' Donuts is America runs on Dunkin', and it's like you're all like running on Dunkin' because like you're so hyped up and buzzed from like whatever kind of caffeine they put in it, but also like the other kind of runs.
Gotta run. Yeah. I think that would also be applicable to Tim Hortons. But like there was a time with their iced coffees, you couldn't order it black because it was just pre-made with the syrup. And you're like, okay, now you can order a black iced coffee. So we're getting there.
All right, progress.
Yeah.
So you don't get the sugar crash and the caffeine crash at the same time.
Yeah.
All right. Last question.
Okay.
If you had a piece of advice for any young aspiring paddler, what would it be?
I'm trying to think of like myself and what I would want to hear. And I think it would be like don't feel like you're missing out if what you're investing your time into is what you're passionate about. Like if you feel like because all your friends are going out that you don't have to do it, because if that's not where your happiness is, if your happiness is in getting better for yourself, being a better athlete, don't feel bad for investing and being selfish and doing everything that you can to get to where you want to go. I guess that's with anything too. Like people are going to get to where they want to go with less hard work than you sometimes, but if you put in as much work as you can get there as well. I don't know if that like was a word vomit, but
It's all okay. Good. Someone's going to hear something that's going to resonate with them.
Yeah. It's okay to dedicate as much as you would like into something that you're passionate about. And don't be afraid to try new things.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid to be bad at something. I'm just like giving like 10 things now. Don't be afraid to be bad at things. Like outrigger canoe though, like
FOMO's okay.
That's something that I like am still learning and dipping my toes into. And it's like it's okay to put yourself in uncomfortable situations to try to get better at something and not be
the only way you're gonna learn.
Yeah. Be okay with not being the best at something because it takes time to get there. There's another one. There's like 4.
Great.
Yeah.
You followed the instructions.
Yeah.
Good job, Abby.
Let me eat all the donuts that you want. Find a good coach.
Oh, okay. All right. We're going to stop you there. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me.
No problem.
Thanks for sharing all of your knowledge and experiences and stories and awesomeness.
Yeah. Thanks for doing what you're doing for the community and getting more of the word out there and creating more conversation in our paddling community. It's the only way that we can actually get our sport to be better known and get people talking about what we do too.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Okay, let's go.